Hello world, this is Hello Chaos, the podcast about the ups and downs, highlights and low points, and all the crap that happens with entrepreneurship. My name is Jennifer Oladipo, aka Jenno.
And I am Jennifer Sutton, aka JJ. And we're your host for Hello Chaos. And today we have in our studio, or not in our studio, visiting virtually, is Cam Flowers with Floreo Labs. Welcome, Cam.
Hello, Cam.
Hello, Cam.
Thank y'all so much for having me.
And now, where are you coming from? Is it New York? Is that correct?
I am a Chicago native, a New York transplant, but a man of the world. So I go all over the place. But currently, I am in New York, though. Yeah.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about Floreo Labs. This is your baby, right? This is a founder-led company.
Yeah, and it's funny. I try very hard not to think about it like a baby, because you don't want it to tell you that your baby is ugly. But with business, you kind of have to take some of those those little critiques. But yeah, Floreo Labs is a passion project and a really big, I would say, kind of a life work project of mine. Essentially, we're a creative technology consulting company that's enabling impact and innovation across the country. Our belief is that innovation is a process, a scientific process that anyone can learn, whether you're a kindergartner, pre-K person that's just getting started in the world, or corporate C-suite exec that wants to figure out how to drive meaningful change in your organization. Innovation is something that all of us as human beings are capable of taking part in, because our world is full of problems and needs creative solutions to solve. And so a lot of our work in Floreo Labs is about teaching the innovation process, which to us is a combination of skills in design, technology, and business, which allow for people to better understand problems as they arise in their landscapes and identify creative solutions that they can test and improve over time to be as efficient as they need to be. And so we bring that mindfulness on the tech sector, on business innovation, and on just social change, and the motifs on like how can we drive newness in the world that we live in, to sectors that range from education to the political space to the nonprofit arena, and but also supporting a lot of up and coming entrepreneurs and founders doing amazing things in the tech sector, which typically has been where a lot of that talk about innovation has been situated. So it's really cool work to be able to inspire young people, inspire folks who consider themselves non-technical to see themselves from this standpoint of, oh, I can take part in making meaningful change in the world around me. And a lot of our work has been at the city level and creating impact in cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, Atlanta, New York, and really supporting folks who are looking to make change in those areas, being able to do so through a very thoughtful process that can be repeatable, so that change is sustainable and can scale over time. Floreo also in Latin means I flourish. So our whole purpose as an entity is to create a space, an ecosystem of sorts that allows for folks to feel that feeling in all the work that we do as well.
So how did you get started? What was the first step of this is fantastic.
I love it.
I love it. It's where we thrive with entrepreneurship and innovation, and innovation, I agree, is happens in every industry, every sector, and a lot of people just think it's tech, but you need to have an innovative mindset no matter. It's problem solving, and it's creative problem solving. So I love that.
And we've talked a lot about how people think of an innovator and there's already an image, right? And there's a certain kind of person, certain age set, often certain gender, certain demographics, and all that goes with that. And those are innovators, and everybody else is, I don't know, doing something else.
Yeah. There's a lot of myths around that. So the fact that your whole business model speaks really loudly, not just to Jenno and I, and kind of what we're trying to amplify at Orange Whip, but these are the conversations that we've had with so many entrepreneurs and founders of being seen, and getting the support they need to help them flourish. With their, whether it's a passion project or they've found a solution to a problem. and then how to monetize that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, what was your background? Like, how did you just say, you know what, I've started this, or I found, I'm gonna start this business, and then how did it take off?
Yeah, I think that I like to tell people jokingly that I never aspired to be an entrepreneur. I think that it was just the right way to actualize the work I wanted to do and the impact I wanted to make. So it was a natural progression of being someone, I've always been someone who's been concerned with how do we make the world a better place? Like, how do we not just sit in all of the problems that exist day to day and feel paralyzed in the knowledge of those problems, and get to a point where we can actually create the change that we want to see. And that mindfulness, starts early, starts from, experiences as a kid in inner city Chicago, and being raised by parents who encouraged me to take that curiosity and turn it into opportunities for innovation. And being supported by community. It's like I could do my Oscar speech now, and shout out all the people that helped me win. But to answer your question more specifically, I feel like that being a problem posing person that cared about how do we not just look at this problem and just sit on our hands, but take action. Led me to a really interesting career, or led me to an interesting learning journey, I would say, when I was in college. And in college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was somebody who cared about solving problems in the world, though, and cared about people and cared about seeing change. And so naturally what happened was I got very interested in some humanities-based classes and things that were focusing on talking about those bigger problems in the world, the sociologies, the psychologies, and all of those kinds of scientific social sciences. And got really involved organizing, community organizing, and being a part of a lot of groups. And I went to school in Boston at Tufts University, and so at that time there were a lot of student-led activist groups doing a lot of meaningful campaigning around many different issues: racism, sexism, homophobia, all of the major isms. And on top of all of that, I started to notice that in those spaces, we have all these really fantastic thinkers who care about solving the problems of the world, but they were getting demoralized often with the how large those systematic problems really are. And it's nobody wants to be a person that keeps bringing it up in the room, like, hey, the planet is burning, people don't have the rights that they need, like we're running out of water, like there's like real serious things that like nobody wants to have too much conversations on, because it gets very crippling in a lot of ways. And that I always was really motivated by, how can we stop having that feeling of there's nothing we can do? And randomly around that same time, I decided to, as a young diligent college student I decided to try to get as many classes out of the way that I could, so I could graduate on time. And I needed a math credit, so I decided to take a computer science class because it counted for a math credit at school. And that was like the first foray into the idea of technology for me, was this random decision to take a computer science class, and realizing in the computer science space, it was because of the fact that I am a thinker that loves connecting the dots. And so in the computer science class, I'm thinking about the stuff in my social sciences classes. In my social sciences classes, I'm thinking about the stuff in the computer science space. And so I've always walked on that intersection of the social impact and how can technology and innovation be a part of that conversation. And so that led to, after school, being very motivated by how to empower education and technology so that people can remember these big picture things that you can do with technology, and led to a long career of like tech education work and consulting, supporting businesses, supporting folks that were launching new initiatives. And over time, all of those experiences made me realize that it's way bigger than technology as we know it. It's way bigger than websites and applications and the things on our phone, and much more about the process that technology teaches you. How can you, as a individual person scientifically make progress and efficiently create the systems that you know you need to have in order to drive the results you want, which is what big tech companies do great at, right? Like there's no other way for a company to be worth $1 trillion if they're not doing innovation constantly.
Right.
And when I realized that, and I realized that, oh, like there's all these good organizations doing such meaningful work on education, youth and community development, and all these other big picture things that are equally a part of our, what we call in the lab, an innovation ecosystem. I realized, wow, like what if I bring that knowledge of what these large companies are doing day to day and spending millions of dollars on in a more accessible format for people who are looking to get started now. And what we do is train and consult in those regards and helping organizations of all backgrounds really achieve that same level of impact and through innovation.
I'm inspired.
I know. So how did you get started of, okay, this is the concept of the idea. Did you take it to your hometown Chicago first and said, look, let me bring this to you? And I'm just curious of like, what was that first step of that first city or that first client?
Yeah. It actually, so in a way, it definitely started in Chicago through conversations. Like Chicago is a very creative and artistic city. So a lot of the youth have a lot of passion for creating new things. And so it definitely, I feel like the seeds were planted in Chicago, the seeds of, hey, as a young person that's creative, I could be doing more to inspire innovation. And I would say that a lot of the folks that really made me as a young person think about things in this way are people based in Chicago. But actually my first like real experiences getting started in this came when I moved to New York. I had in Chicago, I was actually doing a lot of meaningful work as well. Like I was leading some boot camps, like tech boot camps, teaching people skills and technology. I was doing some really meaningful volunteering work, supporting one of the first Black tech incubators in Chicago. And like I said, so those seeds were really planted there. But what happened was I was doing a lot of that as I was in between like jobs. You know, over the years, those same foundational relationships have provided me a lot of opportunities to support larger and more expansive programming. But here in New York, I realized that there's a lot of city-led initiatives designed to increase innovation in the economic sense for New York, which makes sense. You know, Wall Street, everything, financial capital is here. So the city's been doing a lot of meaningful work with, you know, launching specific programs through the Youth and Community Development Department, or creating mayoral initiatives that are designed to bring stakeholders from business and education and together to create these expansive pipelines for talent in the local economy. And I was blessed to be able to contribute to those initiatives, like former Mayor de Blasio's Tech Talent Pipeline, which is a very meaningful initiative that New York started for creating workforce development programming in a more sustainable way through the local universities here in New York. Being a partner of programs like that, and then also having an opportunity to become a college professor at some of those universities that care about these types of innovations. And then beyond that, just supporting the local tech community here, whether it's in the startup sphere or the enterprise technology companies that cared about creating more diverse, equitable, and inclusive programming to get people of all backgrounds into their firms. And I would say that those experiences, as diverse as they were, I was helping companies, I was helping nonprofits, I was helping all of these different organizations. And those experiences helped me realize that all of these organizations are doing such meaningful work, and it seems different. Every time you do a program, it's like workforce development seems very different than like business innovation. Right. But when you really boil it back down to like its core elements, all we were doing was trying to launch initiatives that were designed to have impact at scale. Right. And to me, that is what the scientific process of innovation allows you to do, is create impact at scale. And when I realized that, starting Floreo Labs was really about how can I, as a direct contributor to all these various initiatives, teach that process. So not only can we, continue to forward the economic landscape and innovation ecosystem of New York, but I can also bring that knowledge to all of the other cities of the world. And through a number of really amazing partnerships with other organizations that are trying to enact change in their own way, we've been able to scale our impact from New York into the Twin Cities in Minnesota, to San Diego and the Southern California area, and to the Bay Area in California, and as well as in Atlanta, which I'm very excited about the work we're doing now in Atlanta, because it's providing us an opportunity to support equally as passionate ecosystem of change makers, from the mayor's office to the private firms that are created to establish some kind of stakeholder innovation through things like the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, right? And like all of these different groups of bodies of folks who care about innovation for everyone and bringing that to more people. And so, New York definitely is I say like home is anywhere that shapes your worldview and shapes your perspective.
I like that.
And gives you like, oh, I've lived this experience and now I can look at the world from that experience. I think that's home. And so New York, I can say truly is like a second home for me, because it has definitely shaped my perspective, especially professionally, because as I step into new cities, I can look back and reflect on all of these amazing things that I've seen and had the privilege of working on here in New York, and be able to say, you know what, maybe we can attack that in this way and also create some unique opportunities in the specific cities that we're working in and expanding to as well.
So from your perspective, why do you think, and I mean, tell me if this rings true to you, but it seems to me like in social justice spaces, the kind of technology-based innovation that you're talking about there's really still not a lot of traction. At least that's a lot of the times the case in our region here. And so, I'm just curious, A, does that ring true to you? And B, why do you think that is? Because it is a bunch of people, like you were saying, who are constantly thinking about, like, how do we change things? How do we make them better? How do we improve them? And they're thinking at scale, which is where the frustration comes in. So it seems like there's kind of a disconnect between that and then taking advantage of all the technological advances that we have. It seems like still just kind of rare.
Yeah, I would say, like, when you were speaking, what it made me think about was just being a community organizer. There's a natural skepticism to technology for a good reason, which is that not all technology was created to actually support that impact work that people want to do. And in a lot of ways, I think that what gets popularized is enterprise technology that's meant to drive profits. And in that space, people stop prioritizing people. Technology isn't always designed in ways that foster the right relationships between the stakeholders that use it. And that's a lot of what we talk about when we think about, the design technology kind of Venn diagram, right? Yeah. How do you build technology that actually starts with a human-centered approach? And techniques like design thinking and various processes like that allow for you to build technology that starts with an understanding of who is going to use this, what is their needs, how do we solve their problems, versus a lot of technology that's created in a silo from venture capital money that's just like, hey, we're building this because we can,
right?
Versus we're building this because we should and we
found
need
a
to.
need to.
And,
okay. Yeah.
Right. And I think that for folks who are naturally working to create impact, most times they're doing it in non-technical ways because it's easier for them to get started. So the conversation becomes, how do we integrate technology into what's already working for us? And I think that is a space where tech education is really important, because not everyone is learning that technology is way beyond just learning how to code. I think right now the conversation of technology gets very much focused on, go learn how to code. But there's so many other fields of like technical product management, technical project management,
that's right.
And those types of career pathways that will expose more people to how do you strategize how to use technology in meaningful ways. And a lot of what we do in our work is show people those level of skills as well as the more hard technical skills, so that they recognize you already have been a part of the tech sector. You already have the knowledge you need to be a leader in the technology space. The question is, what does the technology need to do to solve the needs of your stakeholders or your communities? And how can we make sure that we build technology that starts with that focus versus retrofitting technology that we're just used to into our strategy? One, to create something with your community in mind, then let's just use Facebook as a tool because it's there.
Yeah.
And knowing that there's all these problems with how Facebook works with relationship to data and privacy and those types of things that are fair points, right?
Talking about economic development, and I mean, we've seen that trend of a lot of cities, a lot of municipalities are bringing programs and initiatives in of how do they expand the entrepreneurial ecosystem. That's the big buzzword among cities, and it's kind of that combination. It could be a city, it could be the chambers, it could be universities kind of bringing, but it's how to build these local entrepreneurial ecosystems, and a lot of it is how do we teach innovation? How do you teach the skill set to want to kind of, whatever your passion or whatever your problem you're trying to solve, can you monetize that into a business? And I've lost my question, but I feel like your business model, when you go into these markets, I mean, that's what the purpose is there for. It's right. It's to help build the innovation ecosystem, but at the same time, you're really building the entrepreneurial ecosystem, which in turn, doesn't it build that local economy? Doesn't it?
On itself, yeah.
So I'm over here smiling, listening to you describe this question. Yeah, this is stuff I love to talk about because it's true. I have a very, when I think about innovation, I think that it starts as young as pre-K. It starts from how are we educating the kids, because the kids are going to inherit the world we give them. And on top of that, right, if we want to think about it in strictly business terms, which sometimes you have to not do because they're people, but they're also the future workforce. That's right. They're the ones that are going to be working, quote unquote, these jobs of the future. So whether we want to talk about it from the business lens or the social lens of the good of education and the need of it, it starts as young as that. And so building innovation requires building up the education sector, building up the knowledge base, the skills, the resources that young people will have at their disposal to then make impact in the world that we leave them. And then it continues into the, higher education is meant to be kind of a direct kind of funnel into the corporate space and into business. And so right now, we've worked with dozens of Fortune 500 companies who talk about struggling to find qualified talent for technical roles and non-technical roles that are coming in these more modern technology companies, and recognizing that it's because of this gap that happens in the education gap that occurs in the system of education we have right now. And I believe that entrepreneurship also stems from education, because most people don't know that they can learn to be an entrepreneur early as in their teenager years.
Yeah. And Cam, there's a debate, honestly, that there are people that feel like you can't teach it. I think it's a learned.
I think it's
a skill set, and I know that's a big. I think a conversation that's happening in the academic, especially in the university field, of they feel like it can be taught, and I'm glad that you're saying that too. But I know that there are a lot of factions that are saying no.
Well,
it is not.
I'm a believer because I have a elementary age son, and with everybody being home during COVID and stuff, we really plugged into the online education options. And there was a class. I mean, the class was he was just 7, I think, 6, and the class was for a little bit older. But I was like, whatever, it's $20 or $30, I don't remember, but it was an entrepreneurship class. No, it was more than that, but it was they met 4 times And it was everything. I mean, it was everything that I've done, that you've done, in terms of what's your business plan? What do you have? Because he wants to be a DJ, right? So he had a little DJ set, and I was like, he's like, yeah, I wanna perform for kids or whatever. So he had to figure out who was his audience, what was his message, what was the product and how much it was going to cost, and he was, and then he had a little. He did have the best PowerPoint, by the way, at the end of the class, even though he was the littlest, because he really went all in. And so, figuring out, well, his audience was bored kids in America. And so he could do, virtual DJ sets until everything opened up, and then he could do kids' birthday parties. So, I mean, he learned, he understands now when he's looking out in the world, like what's behind the things he sees or the things he consumes.
It definitely is teachable. I was going to say, I definitely believe that entrepreneurship is teachable. And part of the reason why is because we've done it. And in the lab, we actually launched a program. A lot of our work is on training people in different innovation processes and giving them a framework to understand, like, hey, what you're doing is a process that you can repeat in all these different ways. And also consulting businesses that get developed from that. But in the training space, we actually launched a program in 2019. It was actually like our first big offering as a company that, made it clear that, hey, taking a risk and jumping into entrepreneurship myself was going to work out because I had something that fit a need of a market, right? And that was teaching people, allowed them to start new businesses more successfully. And we called the program the Lab Accelerator Program. And the idea was, in 2 months, teach everybody the skills that they would need to basically come up with a business idea, market it, prototype it, test it, and get the feedback necessary to understand how to take next actions in a more strategic and scientifically informed way, and research informed way. And we've taught that program to kids in high school. And like, what's interesting is these kids in high school are thinking about college and like future and what they want to do, but have no clue because school didn't really prepare them to think about a career. It just prepared them to think about subjects. And so we've really seen these young people blossom as thinkers when you give them an opportunity to say, what are you interested in, right? Let's take whatever it is you're interested in and let's figure out the process that it would take you to build something meaningful around that thing that you're interested in. And that whole process teaches them skills in design thinking and empathy, and like to J.O.'s point, right? Like how to understand the problem from the community that you're trying to serve. And all of that research is research skills, right? We learn that in school. We've learned the skills that we need in school,
but no one's used them in a practical sense.
So how do you
They're not
apply
taught.
them?
They're taught in a practical way. They're not taught in a way that teaches you, here's what you do with that to create a meaningful economic opportunity for yourself. And I think to your point, JJ, about like the where does innovation development situate itself with economic development? It creates economies. It creates economic growth if we create innovation, and if we do it the right way, in a way that doesn't exclude folks and doesn't create the same silos of what innovation has looked like. I actually believe that it's crazy that we live in this very capitalist society that cares about economic growth. But then it's like, okay, we cared about economic growth. Why are we leaving out huge populations of people from being part of economic development?
That's right.
It doesn't make sense.
That's right.
So it actually doesn't make any sense, because at the end of the day, if we actually educated kids as young as pre-K and kindergarten on how they can be actors in the world around them and can create solutions to problems that they see in the world around them, it is only going to spur more innovation that ultimately factors back into more businesses being created, more folks being employed because there's more businesses, and growing the economy in larger ways than I think we've ever really seen because of the way that our economy is structured currently.
Well, I mean, and it's obvious, when you look at like really recent examples, you see fintech, right? And like how that's taking off because there's so many people who have been left out of the traditional, banking systems. Right. And so as soon as you give people an entree, boom. There they are. You plug them in, and then there's this economic growth just because you are servicing folks with an innovation, even though it's like backed by, traditional banks. But you've got this element of like, okay, we're not just going to leave people unbanked. We're going to plug them into the system that powers our economy. Lo and behold, that is a very lucrative place to be.
Yeah. Cam, when you've gone into these cities and bring your programs and your initiatives and the labs has it been faced with complete open arms and welcoming, or have you had to face any barriers to kind of talk about what you're trying to accomplish from a bigger vision?
I think that a lot of the barriers are in just figuring out where do people want to plug in and what's the level of impact that makes sense to start those conversations, because not every person that I talk to cares to think at the city level, right? And some of them care to think at the organizational level or the team level of the specific context that they're in. And so I think the challenge had been learning to identify which stakeholders care about what level of scale of this solution.
Okay.
And that took us some years to figure out, because I'm a young person, I'm learning as I go, but I'm somebody who's dedicated like all of my time studying to this particular research question. It's like, how do we connect sociology and linguistics and computer science and business in these unique ways? And that's literally what I studied in school. I created a major to study that in school. And the thing about it is that I feel very knowledgeable about the problem that is, how do we create an innovation ecosystem? But everybody plays a unique role in that ecosystem, right? Talking to school leaders is different than talking to business leaders. Talking to business leaders is different than talking to city elected officials. And so understanding that you have to speak the language of the space you're in and show the value of the bigger picture vision. And so that, I think, is just naturally a barrier. And then having opportunities like this to talk about it openly with folks who understand really what we're talking about here, in order to just inspire more people through dialogue to see and to listen and hear, like, oh, like this is a way of thinking that I can be thinking about as well in my own way. And I feel like that's like one of the bigger barriers beyond like normal startup running a business and trying to crack that 5-year statistic and not end up like a business that fails through the challenges of starting a small business. But I've learned tremendously in the last 4 years. We're almost at 4 years of being in business, and in those 4 years, it's like we've seen so much, have impacted so much. I feel successful already because we've done so much impactful stuff already. So
celebrate those wins, Cam.
Yeah, I know.
You need to celebrate those.
People don't. Many people
we don't. We forget.
How do you problem solve, in your own business, right? You're out there seeing everybody with this, a kind of clarity and connectedness that's hard to do from the inside. I mean, as you've, what are some challenges you've hit up on, and how have you dealt with them?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that I've learned in even this last year of being in business is that business is all about relationships, and life is all about relationships. Every interaction we have with another person, in my mind, is a partnership, but we're just creating terms for what that partnership needs to look like. And I believe that in a lot of ways, when you think about healthy partnerships in a romantic sense, you think about, you got to be talking and communicating. We got to be doing things. Like there's like a real like romantic association with like what a good partner is, right?
Yeah.
In business, it's a similar kind of concept, right? What is a good partner? Well, there's clear terms, there's boundaries, there's clear communication, there's honesty and transparency, right? Like all of those partnership things are skills that we all kind of need to learn in general. And I mean, admittedly, running a business, I started a really amazing business with people that I really care about, like as friends, as family even. And so learning how to have multiply deep conversations about what our relationships and partnerships look like has been difficult. It's not been the easiest thing. And I think over time, some of the folks who were really like the day ones that connected with with me to create the idea and of expanding this passion project into a real business. Over time, like, viewpoints change, people change. The pandemic has impacted business globally because of how can you actually relate, right? And so just as the pandemic made regular relationships put a strain on them in terms of how you can show up for your partners in a meaningful way, it did the same for business, right? And I think that there's a growing need, I think, in to continue to reflect on how do we keep that awareness but act upon it, right? And so in the lab, what we've been doing has been identifying new areas and opportunities for like increased communication. Our whole team is a remote team. It's a distributed team. So we had to kind of innovate ways on how do you build culture in a distributed environment. And also, I think a big thing is how do we teach this same process of innovation so that our team members understand it and can act upon it, so that we're doing the processes that we're also attempting to teach to other folks.
Right. Got to walk the walk, right?
Right. Yeah. You gotta, like, and nothing is more natural than, hey, I do this naturally. And I think that, it also is, as a small business, you as the leaders, like myself, Naomi, like we have certain processes that we established that have been working, and now it's about teaching and creating opportunities to coach those folks who are going to help us grow those processes out now as our business expands. And so I think it's like common business challenges that we're facing, but I think we're approaching it with this knowledge that these are problems multiple businesses are having. So us taking time to really think deeply and critically and reflect and take accountability on the things we haven't done right will allow us to come up with solutions that might be solutions that other businesses around the world might be made better off with, because we took the time to reflect and innovate there.
Nice. Hey, Cam, who funds you? I mean, when you go into these markets and these initiatives, is it the municipality? Is it is it a combination, or are you grant funded? I'm just curious of like how do you get your funding to go into these cities?
So we're a B2B business, so a lot of our funds come from just direct partnerships with businesses that take us on as clients. And so we are, as vendors, I should say, from their perspective. And so we've established some meaningful client relationships and partnerships with organizations that are doing like attacking the innovation ecosystem in a very particular way, and supporting those business leaders in not only in the design and strategy piece of their work, but also in the implementation and testing and adapting phases of their work as well. We have a number of different techniques and workshops and a variety of ways to kind of expose people to like thinking in the larger innovation context. And so a lot of the ways that we've been going about funding have been just direct B2B kind of vendor relationships. But I think our hope is, much like we were able to partner with municipalities on some of the initiatives they're launching, our hope is to also kind of create more proposals that allow for those municipalities to take us on as well, to show, hey, we have a strength in when we can start from the beginning of initiatives as well. And oftentimes when we get hired now, we're in the middle of something, folks are in the middle of something. But I'm very much excited about partnering with organizations that are striving to create a more cohesive ecosystem. And in Atlanta specifically, like there's so many opportunities, right? Both within the education and workforce space and in what all of the wonderful folks in the entrepreneurial ecosystem are doing with like things like ATL Unlocked and Startup ATL and stuff like that. So I'm excited about just, continuing to see what all the work that folks are interested in doing and figuring out ways to uniquely bring different stakeholders to the table so that we can have dialogues that turn into action and really turn into that direct economic impact that we're all really trying to see.
That's right.
I love it.
Cam. Thank you.
We're out of time.
I have one question for you though. It's a good one. You'll appreciate this.
Okay.
So
I'm the timekeeper.
No, she's the timekeeper. But because we talk, the two words that we use a lot in our podcast, but also in our media company and vernacular, is entrepreneur or entrepreneurial.
Oh, yes.
And ecosystem. What are alternative words for either one of those? Because they're hard, like,
yeah,
hard to write when you're taking notes.
Person to ask.
Yeah. So you said the words of entrepreneur and ecosystem?
Yeah, entrepreneur and ecosystem are two words that are like,
we just use them a lot.
We use them a lot, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, that's corporate speak," or that's.
Or a lot of people love it, but we've been trying to figure out other ways.
Are there other words
that thing
to even use to describe an entrepreneur?
What do you call yourself?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I call myself a lot of things. A creative technologist. I like to call myself a creative technologist because I use technology in creative ways to, solve problems. Like designer, like a lot of what we talk about is the terms we use to describe things like design. I think are often stray away from things that are outside of the visual arts. But designer, I think, is a very meaningful word because as a designer, you're creating something. Right. And in creating something, most times you're creating something because of a problem or something you've identified a need for, right? There's a difference between like a designer and an artist, for instance. Like an artist, there might not be a need. It's just the desire to create. Yeah. But with designers, they're creating something specifically, right? When you think about the world's best like fashion designers or the world's best like architectural designers, right? Architect is another word that kind of signifies this combination of creativity and technology. I think that's what I would say, because entrepreneurs use a lot of skills that are not quote unquote technical skills that you would think about, but they are, if you broaden your understanding of technology, to be systematic processes for driving efficiency. Yeah. As an entrepreneur, you're creating those, right? And so I think that I like to say that I like to help people realize, like, in a lot of ways, you are a part of the tech space, right? And it's just a way of thinking and a way of moving. Engineers approach problems in a specific way. That's why we call them engineers, right? It doesn't have to strictly be because of the fact that they're building a technical thing. And I think that if more people can see themselves in that way, we won't have such a gap between the people who think about tech and the people who don't. It would be something that allows for more kind of cohesive understanding across the board.
Can you one more time say your definition of technology? It was and processes to enhance efficiencies. Yeah. What was that?
So, I just said that one off the top, so it's gone.
Well, I mean, I was like, yes, that's excellent because that's accessible. The way you said it was accessible. I think you said just creating. I'm missing the first word, but it was developing processes to increase efficiencies, and like that's it. Like that's a fork. That was just to make it more efficient for spaghetti. Light more efficiently to see.
People look at inventors and they're like, oh, as an inventor, you're creating something, right? Yeah. Like all of these things, all of these terms are similar, but it's just about how you apply them in the way that in your own way. And I think that technology really, to me, is about like the processes you use to solve problems, and design is similar in that regard. And I think that I try to help people as young as the pre-K kids we talk to recognize that they can be thinking like technologists and thinking like designers in everything that they do.
They don't have to be a coder.
In doing that.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to be a coder. Right. Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. No, we really do have to go.
Okay. Thank you, Cam.
Thank you so much. This has been great. I want to check back in and in the future and see how things are going with Floreo, and where's the best place to find you and your work?
So you can just take a look at our work on at our website, floreolabs.org, or our LinkedIn is a great place to kind of keep up with us professionally. And I'm grateful for both of y'all for having me on the show. I love conversations like
me
these.
Me too.
I'm
this is fantastic.
To listen back and hear it again.
And people can tune in to this podcast we're on all the platforms, so find your favorite platform for podcast and look for Hello Chaos podcast, or you can go to our website, and it's orangewhip.com. That's WIP for work in progress, orangewhip.com.
Yeah.
And you can learn more about the media company and what we're trying to do to help fuel local economies through entrepreneurship and innovation discussions and conversations. So thank you.
Thank you, Cam.
Thank you all. Take care. Enjoy your day.
You too.